I am Jurriaan Mulder and this is the Batavieren podcast. And we're, like you can hear, we're doing a little something special today because we're doing it in English. My co-host will be Yernaz.
Hello, listeners.
And we will be interviewing Kassy Dillon, all the way from Amerika.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to talk about a whole range of things about the situation in America on political correctness, the campus life, the Trump administration, Israel. But let us just first start with who you are. Can you explain to the listener what you do and what you're going to do?
Sure. I'm 22 years old and I just graduated college and I just started joining the Daily Wire. So for the past month, I've been working in the White House with them, reporting from the White House, and I will be moving to LA to join them in studio and doing a lot of camera things like that. I also write for the Wall Street Journal, The Hill, feature female leaders, campus reform, so a lot of these different outlets. And I also started my own outlet called Lone Conservative, which is a group of 250 college students who write about the craziness that happens in our campuses in America.
Oh wow, so you're in a wide range of journalistic adventures, endeavors.
Definitely all over the place.
I
also go on Fox News sometimes and talk about that stuff, and I also give speeches on college campuses.
We got Yernaz here as our Amerika expert.
Yeah, so a lot of things to get into there. Like maybe first you want to tell our listeners, because I guess a lot of them know Ben Shapiro. He runs the Daily Wire. So
yes.
Maybe you could give us some insight about how it is to be working for him.
Yeah, some insider info on Ben Shapiro.
That's what we love. Dish.
Well, first, I discovered Ben Shapiro my freshman year of college, so 4 years ago. I saw him on a video on Facebook, which I'm sure how most people find him. And I absolutely loved what he was saying. And so I started following him closely. And I had the chance to meet him at Yale when he gave a speech there. And then we became friends. And I started writing for the Daily Wire. And now they just hired me full time. So Ben's a great guy. He actually does talk that fast in person. I'm sorry to all the foreign listeners. I know that must be a hard time to listening to him. And I'm actually trying to speak slow right now because I usually talk almost as fast as him, but not quite there. He's a really nice guy. He's very fun. He's a great mentor. He's been awesome for me. If I ever have a question about, hey, should I do this interview? Hey, what do you think about this? He answers. And he's also there for other young conservatives like Kyle Kashouf. He's the Parkland conservative kid. Talks about gun rights in America. So he's a great guy. He really is. And yes, he talks that fast and he's actually that energetic in person. We actually call him a robot. We don't know how he does it.
Before we delve further into this, maybe you could say something about your position. How would you describe yourself in the American political spectrum? Choose any words you wish.
Yes. So
how would you do that?
So I call myself a conservatarian, and I don't necessarily like saying I'm socially liberal and fiscally conservative because I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I think as a conservatarian, we don't even like calling ourselves that because we don't like giving ourselves titles because we're very individualist. So I think the main issues that define me, because I think that's the easiest way to talk about it, is I focus a lot in the Middle East, because that's what I majored in college, but in the American domestic issues, I'm pro-life, which, that one's a little tricky as well, but I'm definitely pro-Second Amendment. I'm pro-free markets, which is why I break with the Trump administration a little bit, and I'm definitely pro-small government. So those are my main issues. And then obviously there's social issues as well, which we could get into, but yeah, I think that's about it. And I'm definitely a Republican, and I did vote for Donald Trump. And I openly talk about it.
Okay, good to hear. Maybe we could delve into some of the stuff you're doing, giving these college campus speeches. Like, what is the goal of that? Do you want to, inspire people? Or do you want to teach people how to live as a right-wing student in a left-wing campus?
So originally, I just went to college to get a degree. My parents didn't really go to college. My mom graduated when she was 35, which is a lot different than going into college right after high school. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. People always ask me, well, why would you go to a liberal school? I went to an all-women's college. So it's like, why would you go to a liberal school if you're a conservative? And I would always respond, well, I didn't know what I was doing. And they don't believe me, but I really didn't. I went to my school because it was right next to my hometown. I didn't want to leave my friends or leave my family or my job. So I stayed there. And I can't believe the stuff I encountered. My first day of school, they asked me, what pronouns do you use? And I'm like, do I not look like a woman? Should I, what? No one's ever asked me this before, which is strange because the school's right next to my hometown. So yeah, after my encounters in college and people being very rude to conservatives or not wanting to hear them or just labeling us crazy names that definitely don't suit us, I wanted to empower young people to write, and that's what Lone Conservative does.
The thing here in the Netherlands is with the people who follow the clash about political correctness. They look to the Anglo-Saxon world and they see the trigger warnings and the safe spaces, and we think, oh, those are just a bunch of crazy ideas going on there, but it's nothing really serious, and we shouldn't be afraid of them coming here, except for a few lone idiots who copy it. But can you give us some of the you just named one, but some more examples of how serious it is, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's actually getting crazy where in America it's illegal to have segregation, right? We went over this in the 1950s. We were saying we shouldn't have segregated spaces, but they're coming back in America in the form of students of color, which they have a lot of their own organizations, and they actually have different dorms in America where only students of color can live in it. And yeah, I understand it. I understand they want to be with each other, but there's times where there's been safe spaces where white people weren't allowed into these safe spaces, and that's just a little insane to me. If they agree with you, and why not have them as allies, you know? So we have different issues like that, discrimination off of skin color, which is insane to me. But also other examples, there was a school that during the election, during the debates, they had trigger warnings outside the room where they're having the presidential debates, which is crazy. It's our election cycle. They have trigger warnings for it. But yeah, there's definitely safe spaces a lot. There's a lot of crazy stories like that. We had schools trying to ban the American flag. That actually happened in a school near me where they burnt down the American flag after Trump won and said, okay, well, the flag can't come back onto campus. And so in response to that, local veterans who have fought and died with that flag, and a lot of them, so a lot of them and their families came and they protested this and eventually put the flag back up. There's a lot of examples of things like that.
Maybe this can serve as like a jumping point to one of your favorite topics to discuss, which is feminism.
Yes.
So would you like to maybe give us your version of feminism or your interpretation of feminism, as you will?
So I don't call myself a feminist. I am very pro-woman. At Lone Conservative, half of our executive board are women. But that's not because they're women. I picked them because they were the best people. I didn't even realize that half our board was women until someone pointed it out. I don't look at those things. I look at who's best for the job. So I'm not a feminist, and that's because I don't like what the left has done with the word. They have taken the feminist movement and said, if you are pro-life, you can't be a feminist. If you support Israel, you can't be a feminist. They actually had a march where they tried not letting Jewish women, not even Israeli women, they tried telling Jewish women they couldn't march with them because they were Jewish. So I really don't like the feminist movement. I think you can be pro-woman without joining it. I think there's a push on the right, our type of feminism. So a lot of us will say gun rights are women's rights. Why a woman is not as strong as a man. You should have an equalizer of a weapon for that. So I call myself pro-woman, not feminist, and that's because I think the movement's been corrupted, especially at the Women's March. We saw this.
That's great to hear. You also worked for a month at the White House. Maybe a lot of people in the Netherlands have a certain image of like a chaotic White House. What is this guy Trump doing? Probably because of our mainstream media regurgitating like CNN headlines. You've been there for a month. Just tell us a story from an original source.
Yes.
What is it like to hang around the White House for a month? What do you see?
I'm going to give you guys the day-to-day, how it works for the press. So remember, I didn't work in the administration. I worked in the press corps.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to be clear. Yeah.
So I got in on day passes. So I didn't have permanent credentials. Every day I would apply, but they would give me credentials. And so you go in, you get into the White House facility, and they have all these tents outside for the local news or the video news. And then you have the press room, which is what you see on TV where Sarah delivers speeches. And let me tell you, people are crammed in there. It is not a comfortable situation. People think working at the White House all glorious. No, it's not. There's actually a funny story where there's a pair of wet socks in a bag that's in the White House room, and nobody wants to touch it. They want to wait until who dropped them there gets rid of them. But they've been sitting there for like a month, these gross, nasty socks. They also had a rat problem during the winter. So no, it's not glamorous working in the White House, especially as press. And I think you can see how the administration doesn't really like the media, right? We talk about this. And so it's not glamorous. They have a cafeteria, which is 3 chairs and a vending machine and a water fountain. So it's not glamorous being there. And then the situation within it for conservative media is not great. So I was talking to this one lady, and she's being nice to me. I'm telling her I'm new here. We're talking for like 20 minutes. And then she asked me who I write for. And I told her the Daily Wire, and she didn't say another word to me. Nothing else. And I think that's wrong that people get dehumanized for who they work for, what their politics are. We had a great conversation.
But is it an advantage when you ask Sarah Huckabee Sanders a question if you're from a conservative website, perhaps?
Actually, no. She calls in the same people every time, mostly. She'll add in a few extra visiting journalists. I've never been called on during a press conference, but she has answered my questions when I went to her office afterwards. So you have pretty good accessibility going into their offices and asking questions. So she answered me then, but not during a press briefing. And she usually calls in the same people, which is like Jim Acosta from CNN, who's always fighting with her, and then some of the other ones. And let me tell you, Jim Acosta is just as terrible in person as he is on TV. I've heard he's just rude to everyone. I saw him yell at a Secret Service agent once because he didn't have his ID on. And she said, "Hey, can you put your ID on?" And he goes, "You don't know who I am? Do you not know who I am?" And, that's just rude. She's trying to do her job. And no, she didn't know who he was. She told him that. So yeah, there's definitely some tension in there being conservative media, and there's not many of us.
So you're saying it's not glamorous, it's not per se advantageous to be conservative, but did you notice anything about the so-called chaos? They claim there is. Is there chaos?
There is chaos.
What type of chaos?
So when I hear all this like Russia collusion thing, I'm like, no, these guys can't even get their daily schedule out on time. There is no, if they have collusion, I'm surprised because they can't even get the day-to-day functions down. They're not up enough for that. So basically, there's a lot of chaos, especially with the media, because we don't know when the press conferences are going to happen. She might just cancel them, and you won't know. Or sometimes it's like, hey, there's a press conference at 1 o'clock. You get an email pushing it back 15 minutes, and they'll do that all the way until like 4 p.m. So it's definitely all over the place. It's very chaotic to be media there. But it's a lot of fun, too. You have a lot of access.
Yeah, what the fun part? What are the advantages? Because we're talking about what sucks about working at the White House, but what is the fun part about it? What are the adventurous sides of the job?
So first, it's very upbeat. So if you really like a fast-paced environment, I get emails probably at least 5 every half hour telling me what's going on. So they follow Trump around everywhere. And if you're in the White House press corps, you get these emails, or if you subscribe to the email list. And basically it's like, hey, Trump just got out of his car, he's wearing this, Melania's wearing this. So you get like these updates all the time. So it's very high and fast paced, but you have a lot of access. Like I said, I can just walk to Sarah Huckabee's office, knock on the door and ask her a question. So you have that kind of access. Also, when the Philadelphia Eagles came, they won the Super Bowl. They were supposed to come to the White House. Didn't happen. They had their own event. So I got to go to that event and really, see what was going on, which was kind of weird. The Eagles didn't come, and so basically all the interns in Washington came. And I was asking everyone, hey, are you from Philadelphia? None of them were from Philadelphia, except for a few people. So, yeah, I think the access is the upside. The downside is everything else.
And how is Huckabee Sanders in person? Is she nice, or? She
is a sweetheart. She is so nice. She's very Southern, like Southern Belle. And, the stuff that they put her through is ridiculous. She is a talking head for the administration. She's not making these policies, and they take it out on her, and they attack her. Yesterday, she was kicked out of a restaurant when she was trying to eat with her family, and they kicked her out of it because they didn't like Trump. And so she left, without putting up a fight, and just sent a tweet out saying, yeah, I was kicked out, but that shows a lot more about them than me. And people are ripping her apart, making fun of her. All she does is she does her job. That's it. She's not making these policies. She just does her job.
And did you ever get to meet Mr. Trump himself?
So I've been in the room with him several times. I was invited to a conservative summit, and he spoke. I was in the front row, but I've never really had a conversation with him or anything like that. He's kind of in and out. He doesn't really spend too much time talking to people, especially if you're not at a rally. So like at rallies, he'll talk to some supporters for a while, especially the ones that volunteered on his campaign. But he's hard to get access to, absolutely.
But I did see you posting pictures with the types like Paul Ryan, Nikki Haley. What's it like hanging around those powerful people?
So
Tell us about it.
So Paul Ryan's, I can't say too much about it because it was off the record. Nikki's was too, but I can tell you a little bit more about them. Paul Ryan's great. I disagree with him on a lot of policies, but he's a nice guy. He's kind of like me, where he got his start in the conservative movement. So he did activism before he ran for office. He did a lot of, talking about college campus issues. That's what he did. He's been in Washington since he was in high school. And so he was a really nice guy, and he was talking to us about how he was concerned about the conservative movement and how identity politics are starting to take over right-wing politics. And he's right. He's absolutely right. So he talks about that a bit. And then Nikki Haley, I love that woman. She's going to be the first female president of America. I'm going to be on that campaign. I know that. Whenever that happens. She didn't tell me she's running or anything, but I want her to.
That would be a great thing to know, figure out right now.
Yeah. But I really want her to run for president. I think she's so nice. we were actually sitting down. There's about 10 of us from Lone Conservative, and her assistant came in and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, Nikki," or Ambassador Haley, "you have 5 minutes till your next meeting." And she said in her little southern accent, "Oh, no, that ain't going to work. I need an extra 20 minutes with these kids." Mm-hmm. So she actually extended her meeting 20 minutes. And then as we were leaving the building, they blocked off the road for her to cross the street to go into the UN. And so right after our meeting, she went into the UN, which means she pushed back a meeting in the UN to talk to college students.
So just to get into the nitty-gritty now, you say you disagree with Paul Ryan on a lot of issues.
Yes.
And you really love Nikki Haley. So could you tell us the difference between the two for people that might not be that deep into the material?
Yeah, so Paul Ryan's issue is he doesn't care about enough. The main thing he cares about is tax reform. He will do anything to get entitlements fixed and tax reform. That's like all he cares about. He doesn't talk about anything else, which makes it really hard to get, immigration figured out and all of that, because all he wants to do is talk about taxes. And so he doesn't really get too much done. And I think he gets misrepresented a lot in the media, especially in the Trump movement, because Trump has attacked him so many times that people don't even know what Paul Ryan thinks. But I think his main issue is he's not doing enough. Nikki Haley, I really like her because she did a great job as a governor. Even when I was talking to her, she's like, I wasn't great in foreign politics until I got this job. I didn't really know what I was doing. And so she's really learning about foreign politics and really representing us well. So she makes us look strong. Paul Ryan makes Congress look lazy. I think that's the difference. It's definitely perception, but they're both great people.
Okay.
Beste luisteraars, we hebben jullie hulp hard nodig om de overgesubsidieerde podcastjes van de NPO te verslaan. En dat doet u door naar onlineradioawards.nl te gaan. En daar zit lekker makkelijk bovenaan bij de B, de Batavieren podcast. Klik op stem direct en kies gelijk uw favoriete presentator. En we gaan gewoon lekker de allerbeste worden. We gaan die gesubsidieerde podcastjes van de NPO helemaal kapot verslaan. Verder wil ik nog een paar luisteraars van ons enorm bedanken. En dat zijn Mark Seria en Peter en Dolle voor jullie donatie. We kijken uit naar meer donaties. Jullie zorgen ervoor dat we nieuwe spullen kunnen kopen. En dat we de onkosten voor onze events kunnen betalen. We leven van jullie. We doen het voor jullie. Dank jullie wel. Wilt u bij onze evenementen komen en kennis maken met andere luisteraars, redacteurs en gasten bij de Batavieren podcast? Dan kan dat. Zoek ons op via Facebook en kijk bij onze evenementen wat er de komende tijd gaat gebeuren. Wilt u online in contact komen met andere luisteraars, redacteurs of gasten van de Batavieren podcast? Dan kan dat via de Ware Batavieren discussiegroep op Facebook. W-A-E-R-E Batavieren groep. Of zoek het op via onze Facebookpagina. Laat hier weten wat beter kan of discussiëren over de aflevering. Wat u er allemaal van vond. Dank jullie wel.
I think I'm interested in delving a bit deeper into your own project, in the Lone Conservative kind of thing. Where and why did you started it? When?
That's a great question. So my whole rise and being a talking head and all that started my sophomore year of college. So this is 2016, and I went to a political speech at a college called UMass Amherst. And there's 3 speakers who are speaking: Christina Hoff Sommers, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Steven Crowder. And I didn't know who any of them were going to this. I was just asked to go there by my editor for Campus Reform, but I had no idea who they were. And I went into this room, and there were protesters everywhere, and I've never seen anything like this, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, this happens all the time in colleges, right? And so there was this girl behind me screaming her head off, and I took a video of her that went really viral. The internet calls her Trigglypuff. I didn't name her that. The internet named her that. So if you guys want to see Trigglypuff, just Google it.
Oh, that's the fat girl who was going around.
Get your hate speech off of my campus. Yeah, which it wasn't her campus. That wasn't even her school. She showed up to protest at a different school.
Wow.
Yeah, so after that, I went into Fox News and talked about it. And I really wanted to start writing editorials. And Campus Reform at the time, they only do reporting. So I needed to find an outlet, and I didn't have connections then. So I said, what the hell? I'll make my own outlet. So basically, Lone Conservatives editorials by college students talking about campus issues and then other issues as well. So that's how it all started. Now we're 2 years in, and we've grown. We have about 8 countries covered, about 41 states now. We still got a few of the more rural states that we haven't got covered yet, but we're trying.
Could you tell us about the other countries besides the US where you're represented?
Yes, we have India. We have a few people in Israel. We have Colombia, the UK. We have a lot from Canada. Canada's been growing lately. They have a lot of crazy stuff going on their campuses. But hopefully we'll have the Netherlands soon.
Yeah, so if our listeners want to apply, they can just go to the website. Could you just repeat it for people?
LoneConservative.com/join.
Place it in the description.
Yes, link in the description. We'll put it
Link
down
in
there
the
for you guys.
description, of
But
course.
Of course, you guys should always try writing more, especially, it can help you, especially if you're writing in English, improving English. It's not just a publication, it's a community. So we have a Slack channel, which is an online chat room type thing.
Yes.
And I send people to internships, I send them to conferences. Like we went to CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Conference, and there was 50 of us there, and we had our own table, and we were meeting people. It was awesome.
Yeah, because Yernaz, you have, of course, your own platform.
Yeah, so I don't know if you figured this out because Kassy had me Googled before she came over here because she wanted to know what type of guy is inviting me for a lunch in Amsterdam. I started a left-wing indoctrination on my university. If I translate it for you, it's like a Facebook page. We have 5,000 likes, and I started that 4 years ago, something like that. And that it became kind of a hit, and it's one of the few things right-wing students can get to.
Was it as serious back then, or was it started as a kind of a joke? Because I don't know the history personally.
Well, it actually started with a friend of mine who went to a college, and the teacher said that everyone who's against the EU would just have to die.
Oh my!
And she just said it to me, and for some reason I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna make this Facebook page, and I put it on there, and it started to grow, and I only had 100 likes because only the libertarians I knew liked it, and then I came on TV with 400 likes. And that's when it blew up. So that was kind of luck on my part. But now I have to say in the Netherlands, we're talking about it more and more. We just heard the example of this guy graduating and getting a book of Madeleine Albright teaching him about the dangers of fascism because he happens to support Forum for Democracy. So, yeah.
Shout out to our fan Tristan.
So you could see those things happening in America as well, having a reflection here.
I think it's important you're making content. I think that's great. You're getting the message out there. And it's insane what the levels that they'll go to because they don't agree with your politics. For instance, a school in America recently arrested 2 kids for handing out pocket constitutions. Pocket constitutions are founding documents. They arrested them for that, saying that they were impeding on learning because they were handing them out on the sidewalk at a university, a public university.
Wow, I can't even understand that. Why that would be fair in any way.
Well, they lost the lawsuit, so that's great.
Hey, listen, another area where you're specialized in is the Middle East. Maybe a little bit of a big jump, but hey, we're here.
Yes.
I was interested. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about on this topic because to put it a little bit more to what we're doing right here with the Batavieren podcast.
Okay.
It sounds really weird to say it like that because we're used to do something else, but yeah, we founded this a little 2 years ago. It's a little bit broader than you were doing, Yernaz, and it's a broad conservative liberal platform. We're doing it on our own. How do you call it? Kneuterig is the Dutch word. It's a little bit. We just rumble around and see where it goes, and it got really serious. But how you were doing it yourself, but you're also working in big institutions in the journalist world. How do you see the obstacles for your personal project compared to how you work in the older institutions of media?
Well, it's definitely harder to get into the old institutions, and I wouldn't have gotten there without making my own platform. But what I see, what's so great about my platform, are the people who work for me. They love it so much. We don't pay anyone. It's all volunteer-based. And because people love it so much, it's self-sufficient. I'm going to be traveling for the next 3 weeks, and I don't have to worry about Lone Conservative because I know the people who work there who love it so much will let it keep rising. So I think it definitely shows how young media is more passion focused. People go into it because they love what they do. It's not necessarily to make money. And I think a lot of people want to go be this fancy journalist at Fox News to make money. And I think
you're actually
really
nurturing something.
Yeah, it's my baby.
Yeah, but we see it's really hard because there is this kind of corridor where you can breathe. You see yourself grow, but it's outside of.
Yeah.
But you're in both. So how do you see it? Does it help you transgress that corridor, that barrier for?
Well, you're competing against big money. I think that's the main issue. So the Daily Wire, even though Ben Shapiro has a big following, it's still new media. It's still young media. It's still it's more self-sufficient. And I think the big issue here is you're competing against big money, like I said, but Facebook now is making it harder for new media to get started with all these Facebook ads or banning Facebook ads, having to go through a different screening process for political content. So I think originally it was really easy for young media, new media to compete with big media, but now big media has been putting pressure on social media providers to really cut that back because they're calling it fake news.
Do you have any hard examples, or is it really that passive that it just happens in a actually quite unrecognizable flow, like you described? It's the algorithms change, the rules on social media change, which makes it a quite passive downplay by the big guys.
It's a real thing. For instance,
But you don't have any.
I have a few examples.
Okay.
So, for instance, we were trying to not monetize, but put money towards one of our videos that we made last week. We wanted to get it advertised on Facebook, and they rejected us, saying it was political content. So now we have to go through a screening process before I can get that up. So it's going to take me a few weeks where I can even get my video that we just made up that's relevant to what's going on now. And then YouTube also does this where they demonetize people. So, for instance, Dave Rubin, who's another big political commentator, and even Ben Shapiro in some cases, get their videos demonetized because it's deemed too controversial. So Dave Rubin interviewed Thomas Sowell, and Thomas Sowell is a philosopher from America who is African American, and he interviewed him and they demonetized it and they didn't explain why. So, these young people who are making money off of just ads from YouTube now are no longer being able to do it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Absolutely.
Let's just talk about... something else?
Well, I thought I wanted to go to the Middle East, and then I wanted to ask a few other personal questions. So, you're leaving Amsterdam tomorrow for Israel.
Yes.
You've been there before?
This will be my fourth time to Israel.
Your fourth time?
My first time I went for 10 days, and then I studied abroad, and then I was there in the winter, and now I'm heading back with an organization called the Zionist Organization of Amerika. So it's more of a right-leaning pro-Israel group. I want to see what they're all about. This trip focuses more on the startup nation side of Israel. I mean, yes, we'll talk about the politics as well, but we're going to see a lot of different companies that are run by Palestinians and Israelis together. One of them is SodaStream. So if you guys ever had SodaStream, that's Israeli. And those are Palestinians and Israelis running it. But it's mostly like off the beaten path. So the last times I went, you went to the Dead Sea, you went to... all the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, all like the touristy stuff.
The standard stuff.
Yeah, now we're going more off the beaten path and going into companies and different factories. So I'm excited.
Okay, because criticism against Israel has been rising in Europe and especially in the Netherlands. So do you have a comment on that, an explanation for it? Is it the same in the US? Do you see a similarity there?
I think it might be different in Europe than the US. And I'm not well versed in European politics, definitely more Middle Eastern, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But in the US right now, the anti-Semitism is coming from the left. So it's coming from people who see Israel as this evil state because they protect themselves. And if you really look at what's going on, if somebody shot a rocket, if someone from Mexico, if the Mexican government shot a rocket at Texas, do you know what we would do to them? They would not be okay. We would not be doing what Israel does. Israel has a lot of restraint. And I have an app on my phone that lets me know when the rockets are coming. And when you get one of the notifications, you have 18 seconds to get to shelter when you're around Gaza. So first, I think people are just looking at it the wrong way. But it's the left in America who are becoming anti-Israel. The right loves Israel, which is sad because it used to be bipartisan. It used to be both parties liked Israel. And you can see some of the older Democrats in Congress, so Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they still like Israel. But some new guys coming in who are very anti-Israel. And I think in Europe it's coming from the right, correct? And the migrants.
Well, what I find really interesting here, and to delve a little bit into history as well, historically, the left has been more prone to be pro-Jewish. Yeah. And not to delve into any Jew communist conspiracy, because I don't believe in it. But it was, according to their social situation, was it more normal? Like Rosa Luxemburg was Jewish, Emma Goldman was Jewish. They were all feminists also. Just to connect to your earlier story, that right now it's not okay to be both Jewish and feminist, which is really clear. How did this turn in your perspective?
So I think my boss Ben Shapiro talks about this and he explains it really well. So most Jews in America are Democrats too. It's right. They're not on the right leaning.
3/4 or something.
3/4,
right?
yeah, they're Democrats. But the majority of them are not religious. So it's the religious Jews who are usually on the right. It's the secular Jews who also were the communists who are, more left-leaning. And so some good examples of this are Ami magazine. So that's the Jewish Orthodox magazine in America. And actually, I worked with someone who works really closely. He showed me around the White House. He's a Hasidic Jew, very religious and very right-leaning. And that's because they're worried about religious freedom as well. I think most Jews in America are more non-religious and definitely more Democrat. So, that's probably the divide there. But I see what you're saying, for sure.
I got another question because, it used to be that whatever happens to America, it had a backlash in Europe. But I'm seeing more and more the other way around. So, for instance, Shapiro talking about the Irish referendum for minutes, days after days, talking about it, talking about the result. I think that would have been crazy 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago, people would be like, why are you talking about Ireland? Who cares? So, we're at a place now where, an Irish abortion referendum is relevant enough for Ben Shapiro to comment on. Do you see that shift?
Well, I think America has always cared somewhat about our allies
somewhat.
in Europe and what they're doing. But when it comes to the referendum, one of my friends was actually the Americans who came to Ireland and were, doing stuff. CNN wrote a hit piece on them. NPR was writing about them. And so they came to Ireland to be activists for it, and the Irish media was ripping them apart, but not ripping apart the Americans who came to help them, No. have abortion in their country. So I think America is paying attention to that, but that's mostly because abortion is such a big deal in America. People talk about it all the time.
Let's say the migrant crisis it's getting
That's true.
It's getting picked up. Trump's talking about Merkel's policy. Do you feel that we're living in a new time where big things happening on the European continent could have as much of an effect in America as it used to have the other way around?
Yeah, I definitely do think that. And I think people use the example of Europe a lot to talk about immigration in America.
Yeah.
So the Muslim ban, which it's not a Muslim ban, they use that as an example to talk about Europe. And, some people talk about how people are assimilating well in Europe, and obviously there's statistics showing people assimilate better in the US.
Do you follow European news and what websites do you use? Do you find reliable for that, or?
So I get mostly news from Twitter, which is probably a bad thing to say, but I do see European news all the time, BBC, all of that. And so, I do follow what happens here, but obviously it's such a diverse continent that it's different in every country, and it's hard to keep up with that. You guys are keeping up with one giant America, and, and our news cycles usually focus on one or two things. We've been talking about the kids at the border for, a week now? We haven't hopped off that news cycle yet, so it's harder to follow European politics.
I also have, a personal question, because I'm a big Ayn Rand fan, so please tell us.
The smiles.
How do you feel about Ayn Rand?
I think she's great. I think I haven't read Atlas Shrugged, and I know.
What did you read?
Not much, but I've been to a lot of the conferences. Honestly, I'm a big reader, but I focus a lot in the Middle East. So all my books are always about the Middle East. I'm reading a novel for once instead of an academic book. I wrote a thesis, so I'm taking a break from reading academic, and I'm reading a book called The Lemon Tree. So it's Israeli, but. Yes, big fan. Ron Paul, I could talk a lot more about, but I haven't read. I'll give Atlas Shrugged a turn this year.
You should definitely. Can you maybe tell us something about how she is perceived now amongst students? You talk to a lot of right-wing conservative libertarian students.
Yeah.
Is her presence or popularity growing? Is it kind of the same, or whatever you can say about it?
It's declining, sadly. People will use her as a joke.
Yeah.
They'll use her name as messing with someone who's too libertarian. So they'll be like, "Oh, you're probably one of those guys," So they make jokes about it. I think more people definitely identify with Ron Paul or Rand Paul or even Gary Johnson. What is Aleppo? So definitely more. I think it's harder to align with people who are no longer around. I think that's much more difficult to do than align with someone who's alive. But I don't like people aligning with people. I rather align with ideas than people, because I think people aren't perfect, and you can find out bad things about them.
What I think is, and I'm just gonna throw an hypothesis. I think the decline of ideas like Ayn Rand are not particularly, that the decline of Ayn Rand is not particularly the cause is not in Ayn Rand itself or something. I think it's it's just like ideas like communism. These method ideologies. These we got a few rules. We got a few. You run the method. You can run the ideology and place it on a economic idea. It's losing its popularity because I think it doesn't have any real eye for culture in the same way that other ideas, new ideas, and refurbished ideas have.
Yeah.
Do you see the shift towards culture in America?
Yes, absolutely. So this is why,
just like Marxism is
yeah.
If you accept the idea of cultural Marxism, the whole economic thing is in the trash can. It's away.
It's boring. It's not a sexy topic, you know? This is like why I said Paul Ryan doesn't get enough attention because he just wants to talk about taxes all day. But when you have Donald Trump coming out saying, we're going to build a wall, that's something tangible. That's something people are like, wait, what? No one's ever said that before. So people really care a lot more about social issues. And you see this on campus. So if I had a table out saying, hey guys, this is why you should like free markets, no one's going to come to me. But if I have a table about, say, abortion, that's going to get a lot of attention. And it's also because people don't want to learn about economics. It's boring. They just don't care enough about it, which is sad. And so when you have all these young students on campus running around with Che Guevara shirts telling us that they're communists and socialists and not realizing that communism killed 800,000 people in such a short amount of time, then they don't really get it. And so I think it's definitely sad. It's a big problem.
Well, I think we're heading towards an end now because we're quite into it and we're going to drink a beer together in a moment. So is there anything you want to tell the Dutch audience?
Yes, well first, I'm so happy I came to the Netherlands. It's such a beautiful place. I came here for a layover and I'm really sad I didn't take more time to be here. I really like to see the countryside, so I think this won't be the last time I'm here. But it's such a beautiful place, and to any young conservatives or libertarians listening, I definitely get involved. Create your own platform if you don't have it, but your voice is needed. And the problem we have in America is the conservatives tend to go be doctors or be programmers or something that's not political, which makes our ideas unrepresented in the media and in politics in general. So get involved. That's my recommendation.
Well, as a co-interview guest guy, I would just say great for coming here. I'm really happy I snatched that tweet from you and slid in your DMs to get you over here.
The Twitterverse. Twitter has made me meet amazing people.
Yeah, so that's all very good. And yeah, any next time you come by, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
We'll definitely stay in touch.
And yes, you guys can follow me on Twitter too. And if you guys ever have any questions, please reach out. My handle is Kassy Dillon. We'll put that in the description as well, so you know how to spell it.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for having you. And thanks for listening. And till next time.